It's like there are rules to football and then there are rules to playing tennis, but you should not use your football while you're playing tennis. So I think in the corporate world, there are certain rules and cultural habits. And if you don't know them, you're just, you learn quickly.
You have to trust yourself. It's not don't trust people, but it's trust yourself first and then work with that and you'll get to where you need to be.
So I think it's very important to understand how do I react in stressful situations. It's normal for people who are firefighters. It's normal to learn that when you're in the police force. But nobody is teaching you that when you become a manager or a leader.
This is the Better Coach podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this podcast, we zoom close into the transformative power of coaching through conversation with professional coaches and those they have guided along the way. Join us as we follow these professional journeys, gain authentic insights, and experience real-life stories that illuminate the impact of coaching on personal growth and professional development. You remember back in school, most of us had that one teacher who was so passionate that they made a true impact on your life. Chances are that Claire, our first guest today, could have been just that teacher. Born in the US, the international educator lived and taught across the globe from Spain, Thailand to the Netherlands, where she currently resides. Today, Claire is a global advocate for families to have access to affordable and quality early childhood education around the world. We are extremely happy that she is here with us today to talk about her own demanding times and how she made it her way through with the guidance of her coach, Ellen, who is here with us today. Being engaged wholeheartedly in quite about everything human, a grandmaster of empathy and connecting with others are a few things that come to mind when describing Ellen Happ. Ellen has been working as a systemic coach and business consultant dedicated to leadership and personal development for over a decade. Ellen and Claire first met through their involvement with the Women's Impact Alliance, WIA, a non-profit organization dedicated to empowering women leaders driving social and environmental change worldwide. For further details on WIA, please refer to the show notes. So, the first part, what we're going to talk about today is the phenomena that you are best of a leader if you know to lead yourself in the first place, right? And this is something that Better Coach has in common with you as well, Ellen. And could you elaborate on that concept of the importance of leading yourself before even attempting to lead others for us a little bit?
Yeah. To me, it's a process. It's an ongoing process to actually understand how leading yourself works. It's not something that we learn in school. Maybe it's something that probably school is unlearning or unteaching us. Because to me, it means that before I am responsible for a certain project, a certain team, I should be aware of the fact how I am functioning. Meaning, to me, leadership is cool if everyone's in a flow. Leadership is actually very, very important when it becomes tricky. And when things become tough, I am usually reacting in a stressed way, or people are reacting in a stressed out way. And then to me, it's very important to understand what is happening within me. So if I have learned in early ages that I will be better off to slight, to go out of the situation, it's different to compare to someone who is maybe rather going into the situation and taking care of it, thinking I have to do it all by myself. So there are certain processes that go on within you that you should be aware of, and they're not wrong, they're not good or bad, they're just happening in certain situations. So I think it's very important to understand, how do I react in stressful situations. It's normal for people who are firefighters. It's normal to learn that when you're in the police force. But nobody is teaching you that when you become a manager or a leader. So I think that is one example for being aware of the fact, how am I?
Very interesting. The concept leading yourself before you lead others and then eventually lead an organization. Has that played, to you, Claire, has that played any part in your journey, your career?
Yes, it has. And I definitely resonate with starting with yourself and being able to understand why you feel something in a certain situation. And before I met Ellen, I would react very strongly to situations, whether they were positive to me or negative. But that didn't always get me where I wanted to be. And I never truly felt even, or like I was then solving a solution or solving a problem that I had inside. That was why I was feeling a certain way. And so with Ellen, she gave me the tools and structure and the conversations to explore where these feelings come from when I think, oh, I can't lead this group, whether it's children or managing a team of teachers or working outside of education. And instead of saying, well, here's what you need to do as a leader, it's where does that come from within you and within your system. And it was amazing to learn how I could then feel it, label it, identify all together, not necessarily even in that order. And then work from there, give it space to continue and feel good about my choices afterwards in interacting with other people.
Okay. And what would you say, or even the both of you, like what would you say, what would a person and an individual have to do in order to gain that ability to lead oneself? What are practical steps towards that maybe, or what advice would you give somebody who's new to the concept? Where do you start?
Oh, I would say just pause. Really, for a moment, I had to personally, and for everyone, it will be different. And I think giving space to that as well. So hearing my story, for example, might resonate, but it might also cause different emotions and I experienced that too. Well, why can't I get there or feel like that? So I would say pause and take a breath and be very gentle with yourself. And once you give yourself that feeling of what I would give, I hope, a 5-year-old or 6-year-old in my class, to then give that, you've taught me how to give that to myself. And that opens up doors that you didn't realize were closed. It's quite magical to see that process happen.
Yeah. I was just thinking of another client of mine. It's a manager in middle management and corporate world, and he discovered coaching for the first time. And he said, before I worked with you, I didn't even know that I could observe my ways of thinking. And I think that is a big step to understand that we just human doings. We're doing a lot of stuff, but we're not reflecting on it. And to understand not how is the business working and how's this project going, but to understand that this is a system in itself, my brain, my nervous system, and to have an interest first. So maybe that is also being curious. And the other step is being non-judgmental with yourself. And that is a key for me. If you learn to be that with yourself and to have that other voice that is non-judgmental, observing and analyzing, you are also able to do this with others. And I think that is one of the biggest problems managers have or one of the biggest issues they continue to have is, how do I give feedback? How do I give bad news to my team or to others? And it's all connected. So this is why I'm saying it's connected to each other. I learn a lot about myself when I'm working with my team, and when I do the business, to me, it's a holistic and systemic approach. And that's the way I can use it also for myself. Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting started with that right away. The two of you alone, the coaching journey that you two have had together, it's still ongoing in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, we finished the official WIA. Thank you again. Coaching, and then it was quite. So okay, we continue this. But yes, there are other clients that come back and they come back and continue the work, because again, it's an ongoing process. You decide who you need as a mentor or a coachee on your way. Yeah.
Okay, but in that whole process, I mean, and the relationship you still share even after WIA, and what would you say, Claire, has there been a concept in that work that really stood out for you, a realization even, that you would say, okay, if I hadn't met Ellen ever, I would have never known about that in myself?
Yes, there's been a number of those, oh, thank goodness for Ellen moments. But one that really stuck out to me was a session where we were really getting into systems and what that means to different people. And I was, for the first time, learning about it at all. And she's describing it to me, and I'm starting to think of my own system and where I feel emotions, where I feel reactions, and how I see it in a whole. And I said, I think I even cut you off because I was so excited to, Ellen, I know what my system is. And my personal system is a solar system. And I was so excited because I really could see it in my mind. And it was almost like it was in front of me. And so for me, that means that we have our planets, we have the sun, everything is moving around. And before I knew systems, that felt very confusing to me and very hard. My go-to was, I need to take a nap. That was my one tool. I was napping a lot. And with this idea, I could then see myself as different parts within the solar system. So I'm not always the sun, but sometimes I'm not always a planet. I could be the ring. And just understanding that it moves, it changes, and what are the roles that I have assigned to each planet. Is one productivity? Is one creativity? Which one do I feel strongly with right now? And where then can I go from that? If my brain wants to be productive, but Jupiter's really tired now, and that's where I am, I need to see that and give it space and say, okay, I will work within that energy that I have. And so I could see it from that outside point of view, looking to me right now, looking down, but it could be looking from any side.
And now, should everybody get a solar system now? Just say, Ellen. I think it sounds like a really good model. How would you describe its magic? How did you come about developing that?
I didn't develop a solar system because that's totally Claire's, but I loved it, and I was so impressed that it became so clear to her, because a lot of coaches are using methods or the sort of the framework of inner voice dialogue or working with parts. And I think even if there is, of course, also people who maybe can't deal with this methodology, it's totally fine to me. To me, it's just, it works very, very well. And it means to me that people are discovering, just like the manager I mentioned, that they have a way of picturing their mind and what is going on in their mind, and not only in their mind, but also in the rest of the intelligences that we have. So it's not only the mental intelligence, but also the intelligence of the body. Because if I sit in front of my teammate and he's in a bad mood, I might be also getting that mood. So what does it do to my system? Okay, what does it trigger, as a lot of people are now saying? Yeah, so coming back to your question, I think it's about, with my clients, it's about finding their ways of working, how their mind works and how it works with their emotional intelligence, and how they can use it strategically and still be very authentic with it. Like, I feel that there's the rage coming up, or I feel that I'm not very well today and I'm supposed to be, I don't know, the marketing and sales guy who's selling it all today, but I'm just not feeling like it. So what do I do with that? Yeah, I need to be like on the screen today. How can I deal with this? And that's something that I'm trying to come up with in my clients, so they find their own visualizations and systems. And I have people who just rather come up with the idea of a stage, and that they're not only the protagonist, or they suddenly feel that is the protagonist, that has been the protagonist leading myself for 10 years now, but it's not really working anymore. So I need another actor on stage, and I can be the director and the actor and the sidekick of that. So I'm all of that. But I'm making a decision. I'm making a conscious decision which is going to be the one today or in that moment. And that's shifting. So you can shift from Juno to Mars. Exactly. Another one persona to into that other persona. And they're all of it. Yeah.
Great. For the next question, I think we have to look. I would love to talk a little bit about your biography. If that's okay, Claire, because you are an educator. You started off being an educator, but during your career, you passed being you passed corporate a little bit. You delved into the corporate world for a little bit, for not even a little bit, but for a while, and you later on became an entrepreneur. So can you just quickly walk us through those stages and what you've been doing before we talk about that a little more?
Sure. I'll try to keep it concise. But I've been in education as a teacher for the last 10 years, and I've taught in a few countries, and I've seen a need in different countries or a pattern of what we can improve upon in the education system. So for me, that's creating a space where children feel safe and listened to, as well as those working with them, and how we can create that as an equal footing across the board on a global scale. So of course, that change can't just happen, in my opinion, within a classroom. A lot can, but I had a lot of energy to continue that, moving outside as well. And circumstances happened where I was lucky enough to work with different companies and corporations to bring in resources or ideas or different actors who could really affect change within the system. And yes, that's brought me, and it's more cyclical. It's happened where I have a touch of that, and then I go into social entrepreneurship and I meet people who can help or want to help and continue this change. And I have to say the one constant has very much been, at the moment, me in the classroom. And that's been an amazing grounding factor for me, to say, this is why I'm doing this, and being supported by so many people within my system who not only support me, but also want to help. So it's very interchangeable.
Great. But thinking about how different a classroom is from a corporate setting, for example, I'm really intrigued about that. Maybe not that much. Kind of do know well. But can you just quickly talk about it a little bit, how you navigated that change? I mean, out of the classroom into corporate.
Yes, I would love to, because it's always a great story, especially for people listening. They're like, oh, didn't happen to me. That, thank goodness. It was hard. It wasn't easy at all. And for me, going from an educational environment where I really strive to create a space that's transparent, and we share and we collect ideas, and because we want to make change now, and we get these students now. So if I have a good idea, I want everyone to know about it. I want them to critique it. I want them to use it, tell me how to make it better, and we continue to grow like that. The corporate world, I learned, is a very different playground. And I had to learn how to change my language. It was a lot of, I could speak a lot in educational language and the books I've read, but when it came to even filing an invoice, things I thought, let me Google, and it just makes you feel really small. And if I hadn't have had that experience with Ellen, I would have stopped and said, I can't go on. And through the whole experience, I've also learned, looking back, trust your system, trust your gut. Apparently my gut was in the corporate world for much longer than I was. And I had not listened. And so I had experiences due to that looking back, I realized, okay, system, thank you. I learned, and it's just interesting to look back and see where that journey has taken me now. But it was tough. I'm still learning, but it's getting better and easier.
Thank you. I can imagine. Can I ask you, Ellen, what are common, maybe even common challenges that people face when coming into the corporate world or first entering the corporate world? How would you describe that? What do you see in your practice?
I remember my own experience, and that is a long time ago. That was in 2005. So I just came fresh from uni and very highly motivated. And I thought, like, whoa, so cool to work for them. Big enterprise, automobile industry. And that was cool those days. These days have changed. So people from Gen Z, they don't think it's that cool. So I'm very careful with saying this is in general what people feel like when they enter the corporate world. I felt it was amazing. But very soon I figured out that with regards to openness and transparency, not everything that is said is actually always what I connect with these words and meaning of sharing. And I remember we had a cultural values workshop, and I just answered all the questions as I thought I should. And afterwards, they were really furious with me because, first of all, I was new and I wasn't supposed to speak up. So I had to learn that there's a rule sort of and status. So the status in the room is speaking first. So as you just mentioned, playground, I think it's you can compare it to certain games. It's like there are rules to football and then there are rules to playing tennis, but you should not use your football while you're playing tennis. So I think in the corporate world, there are certain rules and cultural habits. And if you don't know them, you're just, you learn quickly. And I think it is what hasn't changed in these past 20 years is that there's still a lot of status that you need to be aware of. It doesn't mean that you have to like it. It doesn't mean that the people inside the corporate world like it. They have made a huge effort since agility, new work, what have you, to make a difference. And there are amazing people making that difference. But I would say that is something that people stumble over, and also the processes because of that status and because of the bottlenecks, because you have levels, and it's just showing it is the sort of that there is a top and then there is a bottom. And if you think of holocratic approaches, if you think of self-organized teal organizations, it is a circle. So having this architecture or having that architecture makes a huge difference. So, and that is the most interesting thing that is changing right now. And that is also leading to a lot of people into coaching, because the people who are used to that one architecture and set of rules don't know the rules of the new game. And the newbies should be aware of the fact that that other system has worked enormously well for a long time. And there are also a lot of people to respect in that game. So yeah, again, we're ending up with systems and colliding and trying to sort of merge. And that's a very interesting thing that is happening right now.
Definitely. What do you feel like are traits that people have or should develop, or what traits in a person help navigate that? I mean, seeing those unwritten rules everywhere or don't see them, and basically, go by trial and error.
So traits, I think it's, and this is why I'm working with the inner system and the outer system as well, because that's my way of dealing with it. Because if you're used to be on top of something, if you're used to look down, and it doesn't mean that there are arrogant people, but that there is sort of an ego, it's good to have a dialogue with your ego. So if you're used to coming into a room and everyone becomes silent because you are the CTO, CIO, what have you, and suddenly there are other people who think they should say something because they are the experts. Yeah, because when we are speaking of agility in new work, there's a different set. So you might feel put off. You might feel like they don't respect me. That's not okay. Yeah, or this, that it should work in a different way, or decision-making processes are different in the one setting and the other. Yeah, so you think you should have the last word. These are all the things where you can see this is how the organization works, and this is how I work within myself. And I think it's amazing how many people are opening up towards coaching because of that, because they feel, my inner setting is somehow, like you said, like your gut is like something is off. Yeah. And they feel like, the way I used to do my job is not working anymore. The way I'm not that effective anymore, or I don't like it the way I feel. So, yeah, I think it should be open to that, to understand that there are different systems. So systems theory is in general something that I would like people to know more of and to be more familiar with, because I think it's key. Otherwise, people think it's personal, and it's not. It does something personal to you, but it isn't. That's a huge difference.
For sure. Wow, that's really valuable insight, I think, even for people coming new into the corporate world, or also just changing a job, right? Yeah. Because sometimes within one job or the other job, may it be as corporate as the other, it can be a totally different experience, right? Yeah, I'm telling from experience as well. I'm new into the corporate world, and I was wondering about you, Claire. Can you share, is there one specific experience that you might be willing to share from your coaching journey where you address challenges related to that moment of entering the corporate world?
Yes. There have been, I guess, going back to my gut feeling of in education, when everything is so transparent, and I keep going like this because it's not in my mind top down. It's just we work together. There are bosses, but generally when it works well, we're all working together. And when you have a good idea, you are sharing it. And we all make the same money, or we don't get anything more for that. Competitiveness is not always in the education system that I know. And so you don't learn that you don't always, or you shouldn't always share everything. So when I was coming up with different ideas and I was so excited and I brought that same excitement to a corporate environment, I went with the same, you guys have to hear about this and this will make you a lot of money and I want to be a part of it. And then my gut was saying, no, hold that back. But my mind and my ego were saying, but this is what you want. You have to get there because this might be your last chance and your only chance, because who else is going to open a door? Like to me, it was, a door opened. I want to get there. And then how annoying that my gut had to come in and say, Claire, this is not the way. And looking back, I should have done different things and made different, maybe not shared as much information, or maybe kept a bit to myself, or maybe shared it with people who my gut felt very aligned with. Because to me personally, in my experience, and especially learning with Ellen and systems, that is my kind of compass. And the rest, when we all work together, we being my brain, heart, and gut, it's wonderful. But that one is the kind of gets the final say, gets the ending, like the end. So there were moments, yes, where ideas that I had were then spread out, and I thought that was just between us. It's not. Okay. And then I would tell Ellen, I'm not sure what just happened. And she, that face of, your idea is now in the world with people who maybe you didn't need to share it with, and they can now do what they want with it, even though but that's not right. No, it's not right. And that can be the corporate world. And again, I learned a lot from that, and nothing bad came from it, actually. So I'm very grateful for that and happy to continue my work. But it was a real learning experience of you have to trust yourself it's not don't trust people, but it's trust yourself first and then work with that and you'll get to where you need to be.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. But moving on to another subject, if I may, and getting back to you, Claire. We already talked about your biography, and there is the part of yours, and I think many people who listen and watch may be interested in that, is becoming an entrepreneur, being self-employed all of a sudden. And I guess that brings a whole new set of things to think about and challenges. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and also on how coaching guided you on that way?
Yes, definitely. So being an entrepreneur in a new country and the stages of figuring out how to legally create my company in a place where I'm also very new and I don't have my network anymore that I had when I was in Thailand, that was a big struggle because I think, again, I had that one point in my mind that if I make it here, then I've succeeded. And again, with the whole system telling me, slow down, you're in the right direction. Nope, now you're not. And then now you are. And I had to pause, take a break, listen to myself, which sometimes I didn't do. And when it came to my own company and for a year in the Netherlands, I was really working on building this. And I went quite far with it, I would say, and I was very proud of my progress. But there were moments where I thought there are still things that haven't yet lined up, and there's expectations such as paying bills and things like that. So in my mind, it was tough. I would reach out to Ellen and say, I'm feeling this way. I feel like I need to go back to teaching. And to me, that was, at that moment, considered a failure. And that was really hard for me to get rid of. I keep going here because it was that one point I wanted to get, and everything else was telling me maybe that's not even your point that you need. Maybe you need to go a different way, but you're really not letting yourself. So how else can we get that going? Okay, bills, taxes, we're going. And I ended up accepting a wonderful teaching job at this school that supports me in ways I've never been supported before as an educator. And it's opened up an area where now I don't see the education system as broken. I see it as people are trying to fix it. And now I've found my people, and we can really, you start to feel this momentum of, do you want to work with me? This is what I'm doing. This is my company. Can you help me? Can we do it together? And now I'm in this area where my gut is saying, yes, let's go. And then with that, your system aligns. This energy starts coming to you, creative and with a drive. And that dot here, that point starts to become less important. And because you've kind of opened up your mind and body and your whole being into, let's see what happens. My ego is no longer deciding this means I've succeeded. And even that this means I failed, this part of, I didn't get here. I now have the support system because I support myself, I truly believe that people are wanting to work with me. I'm really wanting to work with them, and things are aligning, and you get check-ins every now and again. It's, take a rest, see what's going on with this idea or this person. And again, it could be, maybe it's theirs, they've had a bad day, but maybe we shouldn't be making a decision because we feel that. And it's interesting that coaching has let me see that instead of in the past, I would say, well, I tried, I failed, and move on. But of course, with a bit of heartbreak because failure hurts. And now I still felt you failed, but because we're still a work in progress, I was able to reflect and say, okay, what did I learn from Ellen? What have I learned from coaching? How can I see this with a different mindset? And it took time, but I'm getting there, and it's really feeling good.
Sounds like you were dissecting situations, right? And get really granular. And again, it's like the fight, freeze, or escape response, weighing, should I do that or not? It's like all like come together again. You talk a lot about your gut feeling, right? So that's like a lot of stuff in your body that's happening at those moments, yes. Is there? And has that played a part in your coaching as well? Like the overall experience of how does that actually feel? And is it your gut that you feel it most in, or?
Reason that I'm here today. And truly, and when they're aligned, the three, the brains, the brain, heart, and gut, I feel amazing. But with coaching, I started with Ellen and we talked about, where do you want to get? And I said, I don't even know why I got this. This was competitive and other women deserve it more. And that, I think I know where to start with you. And she'd say, where do you feel that? And I thought, cool, I'll tell you. I don't know why she's asking me this, but yeah, I feel it here. Or she'll say, I noticed you touched your heart when you said that. Oh, yeah, she's actively watching and listening to me. That feels nice. It's very nice to have a coach that's truly with you on this journey. But she would tell me and help me learn about, I feel it in my heart. What does that mean to you? And I'd say, oh, thought that was enough to tell you. Now I have to think what it means to me, but I like these questions. Well, generally, I think this means that I'm emotional, and that's where it sits with me. Other people, it might sit somewhere else. And then she'd say, and what do you need to do if that's not a good feeling for you right now to feel better? And we figured out things like, if I'm feeling it a lot in my head, and I can't break through that feeling, I need to take a walk or move or exercise. If I'm feeling it here, I generally need to have a chocolate bar and take a nap. And here in my gut, it was, you really need to pause and decide, you can listen to it right now or you don't have to, but any choice you make, know that this guy or this girl or whoever at that moment it wants to be is trying to tell you something right now. And sometimes you don't stop and wait for it, but that goes to my brain to say, don't forget. And now I'm remembering, okay, I'll come back to you. But it does take a lot of energy to sort that out.
Yeah. And on those steps of becoming an entrepreneur or self-employed, that triggered your gut a lot, right? And there were moments of fear maybe, and you had to find courage within yourself. You would agree, right?
Yes. And it's new territory. And we spoke earlier today about, for me, when things are new, I tend to get quite anxious. When I was a kid and I had a first day somewhere, at school, my dad would drive my sister and I to the school when it was closed, and we'd break in and hop the fence. And that was always very exciting. And he'd walk us around and explain, this. And so we got a feeling of, at least that part, my brain could see. I know where I'm going. I know where I'll physically be. I walked there with my dad. I jumped that fence with my dad. And then the next day, what we dealt with was the emotions. And it would be, everyone's new here just like you, but it's getting that perspective of, it's not just you. It could be the environment, other people, and practicing and experience that. So with entrepreneurship, it is, I have to remember, some days you can't practice it. You just have to do it. But then you have to be gentle with yourself and give yourself a lot of grace to say, good for trying.
It's amazing. Ellen, would you say, it's also a big question, but maybe you have some thoughts on that. What is there an advice that you would give people who are on the verge or on that point in their lives where they might consider getting self-employed? I guess everybody who's been employed all their life reaches that point sometime during their career and goes like, oh, maybe I'm just going to do it myself. And that's more easily said than done, obviously. But what would you think about that? What advice would you give persons who deliver?
I think it really depends on, again, there are so many perspectives that you can draw on. So there's the personal perspective. What kind of person am I? Am I an extrovert, an introvert? What is the job that I want to do, and what can I do about that? And how do I deal with my customers? So but then there's also, of course, the business. This really heavy business, like what is my product or what's the service that I want to put on the market? How am I going to be doing it differently than others, or can I compete with others? So what is special about my offer? And then I think there's one of the toughest things that I needed to learn coming from corporate, and I didn't even know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It just happened rather to me, and it stuck with me. I was stuck with it. Maybe not, but is the enormous financial way of looking at it. And I think that is one thing. If you're doing it really on your own, I think that is one thing I would definitely say. Be sure that you have some kind of money back in your bank account. It sounds very profane, but it is, because it is risky. It is risky. It's not only what you do, it is all especially in Germany, the whole tax system. So it is a part within me that I needed to develop this way of thinking in financial terms. I hadn't done that before because I could be the specialist and the expert in my field. But being an entrepreneur is so much more. It's a huge puzzle. And maybe other people would be very sure about the financial side and they would say like, oh, Ellen, you didn't think of that? Ha ha. And then there is another thing missing within them. And then there are ways of looking at. So I think it definitely is a journey, and it's much less safer than it used to be at the corporate or working in a team. You are your own team, and you need to build your network of people that you're working with, and find people you could, in the worst case, do the workshop for you or do your product for you. Because if you are one woman or one man or one day show, then you really have to have that safety net as well. So it's a people safety and it's a financial safety, I guess.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And actually, it's a really great bridge for me and transition to, because I remembered when we first started talking about getting together here today and having this podcast recording session, the first ever podcast recording sessions, we talked about something that I found super interesting, and those were setbacks when it doesn't work. And that also, we've talked about that now regarding self-employment. What if something doesn't work out and you have a failure, and there are failures paving our career path a lot, decisions we make or we haven't made. And I think it's this distinguishing moment of failure, if you will, right? And you said that, you put it beautifully, Ellen, because you said, is it a failure or is it a moment to learn? How did you mean that? Tell people who are listening to us right now.
I made a lot of sort of like so-called failures and mistakes on my way. Not only, in me having my own company and also being in the corporate world and being self-employed. So all sorts of different formats that I went through. And to me, it's the only way to keep on going is not to give up, but to say, okay, what is it that I'm taking out of it? It was painful. Maybe there was a lot of shame involved in some of the things I did. But to accept that is like, yes, you are ashamed, or yes, you're frustrated, or yes, you think you can't do this. And then to think, okay, how did I get there? And what would I not repeat? And what do I want to do instead? And it helped me definitely to go on and to also to reduce the anger or to reduce this. And it's all the time, it's coming back to this, like the ego says this thing, but if you're getting over that, there's just so many other options, and it opens up to you. And that's definitely something. And there is this amazing or these buzzwords about fixed mindset and growth mindset. It comes from Carol Dweck. It's not rocket science, but to use it, that's rocket science, I would say. You read the book and everyone says like, oh yeah, I knew that. But using it, really, really be honest to yourself and say, am I fixed right now, or can I grow from this? And that is the moment. And I think coaches, these are the people or mentors who get you in that moment. I was definitely also my mentors and my coaches who helped me. So, and also my clients, for I'm not saying that.
That's great. Talking about your clients. No, Claire, but can you, if you think back, in your career, has there ever been like a moment where like, okay, that hasn't gone that well, maybe it has even been a failure, but how did you look at that opportunity, at that failure also being an experience to learn, to have a growth mindset, if you will?
Yes, definitely. And I wish I could say that in the exact moment I said, well, Ellen said it's a learned experience, so that's what it is. But I am quite an emotional person. And learning that about myself, I knew things like failure would take time because I see it so closely and feel it, to then get to the point of now I can see it. And it takes time in terms of the concept of time that we know, but also in how my body digests what happened and how that takes time in itself. And I do think the progress that I've made from coaching is that it doesn't stop at failure, because I did tend to say, oh, it wasn't meant for me. That's not in my cards. Now I'll do something else, and etc. Now I'm learning to say, yeah, that was a failure, or that didn't go the way I planned, and take a step back. What are my options now? What did I learn from this? What will I not do again? So kind of creating, when you go into, your amygdala is going into, okay, do I freeze or fight or fly away? I feel that happening and I pause and I say, okay, how can we fix this? Because I know, I really feel that no matter what I'm doing is important, and I will continue. Whether that means that point might change, my values and beliefs within the educational system continues to get stronger every day. So I know that no matter what, I will get to where I need to go. And that's also very reassuring. And it feels good to know that that feeling is real. It's not just a really great idea, Claire, you go, that's the American dream. It's like, no. This is coming from somewhere that's different than outside. It's really within me, and I will get to where I need to be. How do I take these failures and moments and learning experiences to get there in a more secure way where I feel good about each step that I'm taking?
Sounds great. It's like a pole star that you have, right? That's leading you when you don't have much of sight, maybe. Fahren auf Sicht würde man auf Deutsch sagen. Mm-hmm. I'm not going there in English. But to the both of you, maybe, so because I think this is it's really an essential topic, and there's a lot of fear connected to setbacks or failures, and something that we try to avoid at all costs, right? But so how can individuals start to develop this growth mindset? Where do you get started even to say like, okay, this has been a failure maybe, but I can learn from that. How do you actually do it? You were starting to explain it, but where do you start? How do you turn a setback into something positive? I mean, that's so difficult, isn't it?
It was, come back to go back to Carol Dweck, because these were the pages that I was very, very interested in. And it was amazing because I found that what she suggested, one of the strategies was exactly what I was already doing with the clients, because listening to that voice who is telling you that this is a failure. Okay, who's saying it? Who's claiming it? Who told me that this is something I shouldn't do or that I should feel bad about it? Because it's nothing bad about making a mistake, but it's rather the feeling that you have when you've done it. So if you have been shamed and blamed a lot, and if there is a lot of shaming and blaming going on in the working area or the field that you're working in, or the team or your boss or whoever, it's of course very tricky. So the first thing that I do is and I have a lot of clients, I'm afraid, that have that so-called imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome. So to separate, again, that voice or that entity that is telling you, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you haven't done enough. Yeah, which keeps them awake at night, which gives them a high blood pressure. So to separate that and to build up another entity or another voice, another planet, another what have you, that is more caring. So one of the questions I usually ask is, would you do that to a child? Would you do that to your own child? Would you say the same thing to them in that voice, in that strictness? And that shifts, because then they are not their worst critique. they're becoming the person who's doing it to someone. And suddenly you have that other that you would like to take care of. And it's a very touching moment usually, because then it's irritating. And because they suddenly figure out how bad they are treating themselves. And it's happening to a lot of successful people. Yeah, it's not usually people who are doing an average. I mean, sorry, because it's never. I don't know if there are any average jobs, but it's happening to a lot of successful people. It's happening more to successful women than to men. Whatever reason there is, we could go into that for another podcast. So I'm trying again to separate it and to and maybe to name some other amazing or an amazing therapist and psychotherapist is Marsha Linehan, who has developed the dialectical behavioral therapy, who was bipolar herself, and she is. I mean, I think what she's done is this idea of acceptance. And because a lot of clients come to me and they want to get rid of that voice, they want to get rid of that feeling. And some of it you just can't do because it's the system that has been set. So maybe you need to accept that it might be a lifelong voice, but you can deal with it in a different way, and you can give it a counterpart, and you can put the carer, not only the critique, into your system. So that is how I work usually with people who have a strong inner critique who is very dysfunctional, because there's nothing wrong with saying, oh, I made a mistake. A lot of people should learn that in the first place.
Exactly. And I just wonder, is it always that inner work, or to what extent do you need other people to do that? It sounds like you need to work a lot on yourself to develop a high degree of empathy also towards yourself, and in order to identify the voices even, to guide them. Like, to what extent do you actually rely on somebody like a coach to do that?
You mean in the beginning, if I understand you correctly, in the beginning they don't have that voice, and I think it's the coach that is that entity for a while until they can implement that coach themselves within them. That is actually my goal in coaching, and I'm quite open about this by now. I didn't do that 20 years ago. But by now I say the reason why we are working is that I really don't want you to need this. Okay. Yeah, so I'm also quite open about the methodologies and the tricks that I'm using. It's because you don't have to do it as a job. You can use it and give it like a takeaway. And that is something that I'm trying to do. So I know that some of my clients who have been working with me for a long time, they just come back and they just like a refresher. Yeah. So
you need them not to need you anymore.
That's my approach. I want them not to need me or not to need coaching, because they have that coach within them. And that is an external, non-judgmental voice. Yeah, it's a voice that, or whatever you call it. Some people don't like saying voice, but like it's an entity or it's a person, whatever you think of is good for you as a word. It is something that is not judging you, but reflecting, and the sparings partner. So that's how I see it. And when they implement that within themselves, they, what would Ellen say? What would Alex say? What would whoever the coach's name is say? Saves a lot of money.
But I have to say, you're very effective. She makes you. I mean, it makes you never want to leave, because she asks all the right questions when you need it, and to really dig deep. But I had a moment like a month ago, I think, and I really was thinking, I wish I had a session with Ellen, because I'm just feeling, and then I sat down for a minute and I thought, okay, well, I don't have it right now, and it's dinner time and it's inappropriate to message her. So what would Ellen ask right now? And it's like my brain or a different entity or something was do, and just the questions I think she would have asked me that we've practiced or worked with happened. And I was able to write it down and think, okay, I can answer that. Oh, that's why I'm feeling this way. Oh, then maybe this is the path I should take. And I thought, oh my gosh, Ellen's with me in the room, but she's not actually here. So, but I didn't know that I was capable of that until I needed it. So when we had our final meeting through WIA, I was a wreck. I was like, I'm not ready to leave you, and I feel like I've learned a lot. But and then we were able to work around that, and also it did help me see, oh, you did teach me quite a lot. I have a big toolbox of things I can use, and it's fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think I learned that also from you, to say, okay, I really want people to feel ready, that they can say, yeah, no, I'm good. I've got the tools, and I know, I understand now how it works, and I've got that entity that is helping me. So yeah.
I think that's a great point to start this podcast. Thank you so much, guys. That was a lovely conversation and a lot of insight. Thank you very much for being here today.
Very much for having us here.